All right, thank you, Roseanne. Thank you for those comments and the discussion of homelessness, which I know we are all very well aware of and continue to be, very focused on here as we look to Portland. And really, I would say, in having living now in several parts of the state with what I do, homelessness is not just a Portland problem. It is a problem throughout all of our communities, and one that many of our communities are working on for the first time. So this is not just a Portland issue. This is a statewide issue. So speaking of Portland, I could have asked just about anybody in this room to be on this next panel as we talk about Portland and kind of what's happening in Portland. But the three lucky guests today have agreed to join me. And first, I'd like to welcome Ed Blackburn, former executive director of Central City Concern. Chuck Lovell, we know him as Chief Lovell, the Portland Chief of Police. He came not in uniform today, which I have never seen him that way. And finally, Dewayne Hankins, president of business operations for the Portland Trailblazers, who's sitting in for Chris Oxley, who wasn't able to join us last minute. So please welcome our esteemed guest to the stage. Good morning. Good morning. All right, welcome everybody. And Ed, I'm going to start with you. As I know that you're familiar with some of the work that Roseanne was speaking of around homelessness and housing and some of the other work that's happening there. So what's your reflection there is kind of leaning back on Central City Concern, but also some of the work that you're actively doing today?
Well, I mean, Roseanne Haggerty has been known in the homeless world as being a thought leader for many years, and really dedicated, actually internationally known in those circles where people are concerned about homelessness. If you don't know everything about homelessness, it's okay. There's other things in the world. But I think what it illustrates to me is that when she talks about collaboration and the data systems, it really hits a fundamental aspect of our efforts that's missing. And we need to listen to her about that and do a lot more. But it also illuminates some challenges. I saw she had a chart in her presentation, was from Bakersfield, California, and it had from 2018 through the quarters through 2020. And in 2018 is when Built for Zero got involved. And they centered on chronic homelessness. They were going to get to what they call functional zero in chronic homelessness. The total population of the chronic homeless population in Bakersfield was 129 people. Today in Multnomah County, it's well over 2,000, that same population. However, by quarter, we see a decrease in chronic homeless in Bakersfield till you get to, and it kind of flattens out to 2022. But then I look at the data that's come out since 2022, and something happened. In 20 to 21, it shot up. In 21 to 22, it shot up again. So we're now looking at 367 chronically homeless people in Bakersfield, where it had gone down. So what happened? The inflow increased beyond their capacity to house people and to serve them. And this is something I think we miss in so much of our planning. The inflow issues, measuring inflow does not stop inflow. You can measure and say, yes, this is how many people coming in. And outflow, measuring it does not stop outflow. It does not facilitate it. You have to be doing things that you can measure to see how effective they are. So we really need to get a handle on a number of things, and this is not going to be news to some people in the room. We are so far behind in supply on the housing side, particularly for low and affordable housing. We're years and years behind, and we need special efforts to catch up on that. And it's just not in Portland, it's just not in Multnomah County, it's affecting places like Bend and Coos Bay and everything. It started here, maybe in 2010 in a big way, but it's in California, Washington, all over the West Coast and other parts of the country. So supply is just not financing, it's also communities being willing to accept these buildings. In the West Coast, we're way down on the capacity of shelter beds compared to the East Coast and other countries, way down. And Multnomah County is way down amongst those. So this kind of thing that can interrupt or stop inflow, we just don't have enough going in there to stop that. But there are two other items. There are a number of things that contribute to homelessness as inflow, but two more that I want to talk about. One is addictions. There is kind of a reluctance to talk about addictions and its role in homelessness, but we have seen so much addictions on the streets in the last buildup over the last 10 years. Fentanyl hit the streets in 2014, 2015. A thing called P2P, methamphetamine hit. These are devastating drugs. I've never seen so many illegal drugs being used by people who are unsheltered homeless. It's around 37% on addictions, 37% on mental illness, but there's another category of 20% who are doing both, who have both issues. And that makes up for about 74% of the people on the street, and we are dead last in the country at providing public access to treatment for addictions. That cannot stay. And the good news here is there's, I think, more determination in the state to address that. We got more resources coming in potentially, but they must be used wisely and effectively, and we must build systems of care. We must not just put people in a residential treatment program for 90 days who came in homeless and put them back on the street to homelessness. We need to make sure that our housing resources are directly linked up with those people who are going to treatment. We should be creating incentives for people to go into treatment to get mental health services, not disincentives by saying if you do, you won't get on a list for housing. And that's what's kind of happening now. And most people say, what? Well, it is. So on the mental health side, everyone knows we have a mental health problem on the street. We have problems with the state psychiatric hospital system. A former director just a couple years ago referred to it as the most expensive homeless shelter in the state. About $1,000 per bed per day. And the reason is they have homeless people with nowhere to discharge them. So they get stuck in the hospital, and what does that mean? You can't get new people in. So we need a system of care between the hospitals, community resources, including housing and treatment services, because they still need services when they get out. There are a lot of examples like this, but the good news there, I think, with the new administration coming in, Governor Kotek, I'm very hopeful that we will see these efforts to build systems of care to be more effective for both the people we're serving and taxpayers. One last thing I want to say is about the mayor's plan, the mayor of Portland's plan. You know, most advocates and providers will say we're in agreement with about 2/3 of the plan, but these camps got everybody a little upset, a lot of people upset. It's conceptual right now. It's conceptual, and I'll say the camps are absolutely terrible idea, but it's like what Winston Churchill said about democracy. If you're not familiar with that statement, he said democracy is the worst kind of government you can possibly have, except for all the others. And that's kind of what we're dealing with here. I'd rather not have camps, but conceptually, I think we have to consider them because all of the resources we're talking about are going to take years to get on board to deal successfully with the size of the population we have. We have to ensure that they're run well, with compassion, intentionality, and transparency. We must not lose our sense of compassion while we're doing this work. So with that, I'll give it a break.
That's very good. Yeah. Yeah, I would refer to you as Chief if you had your uniform on, but I think today we'll go with Chuck. So speaking of systems, you've been highlighted, I'll call it your company, your division has been highlighted a lot lately with safety. And you and I first met on an employee safety panel discussing about employee issues around Portland, and we've seen that lately with Salt and Straw. And I know when we spoke a few days ago, you were at REI addressing the issue that had happened up there. And you also talk a lot about a system of how things go. But as your perspective on Portland and kind of what you see out there from your lens, how can you further educate us on the things from your perspective?
Sure, thanks, Joth. For me, I spent a lot of time in community really talking about, crime and also the fear of crime. You have to be aware of not just the crime statistics, but also the way it's impacting a community and the way people feel as they, live, work, and recreate in your town. And, for me, I think of things in a big system. I run the police bureau, but the police bureau is just a small part of the criminal justice system. And in order for the police bureau to be successful, we need the other parts to be successful as well. And when you think of the criminal justice system from the 911 dispatch, the Bureau of Emergency Communications, BOEC, to the police, then to the DA's office, and then to public defenders, to courts and judges, all the way down to parole and probation. All those systems right now are under tremendous strain, either staffing-wise, budgetarily. And I think when we think of it, we need to really strengthen all of those systems in order for the criminal justice system to be successful. But the criminal justice system isn't going to solve these issues on itself either. So we're going to still need to be good partners with our community partners that are doing the work, really leading to lasting change to get people out of some of these cycles of addiction and homelessness and things of that nature. So for me, I want to have a very strong and thriving, well-staffed, well-funded police bureau, but I also want to be a good partner and help all the other pieces of the system be successful, because that's the only way it really works for all of us.
And you had shared some stats at one point about the amount of police force that you have today, and maybe some things that had happened to how important precincts are and things like that. Like, talk about maybe some of the changes, over the last 10 years. And we opened this morning with Wake Up Everybody, but I think there's some wake up stats that come from your department as well.
Yeah, when I started in 2002, we had 5 police precincts in Portland. Today, we have 3. And I'm asking my precinct commanders to meet a lot of needs of really big communities with a small resource package. And when you talk about things like community trust and community policing, when you constrict down into 3 precincts versus 5, you really kind of get away from that close kind of contact with communities. And we left 2 communities that were really supportive of the police in North Portland and Southeast Portland. And I think for me, it's really about re-examining the service model. How can you put maybe smaller precincts in different places where they can be more responsive to the needs of community? We have a lot of competing and different needs in our community, and we want to be nimble and responsive enough to meet those. And it's very hard if you're in a city our size with just 3 precincts. So that's a piece of it too. And I think, for me, it's really what sets us up best for the future. We all know kind of what the last couple of years has brought us in the city. How do we now move forward in a well thought out, not knee-jerk or impulsive way, but something that's going to really lead to better outcomes for people in Portland.
Great, thank you. And Dewayne, there's not a lot of, well, there's a lot of businesses, but you probably are one of the more prominent businesses that leads with the city of Portland's name in your brand. You also sit in the center of the city in the way that you run an entertainment hub, and really are in the business of economic development. Maybe talk about some of the challenges that's come with that, some of the changes, and maybe some of the things that you've seen, maybe from broader, we'll call it entertainment industries or their perspective on Portland, and maybe some of the things that you think we might need to do to improve some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, Joth, for having me and pinch hitting here. Portland, it's a phenomenal city, been here 10 years, and for us, the last couple of years have been obviously really challenged where we are in the Rose Quarter. It is the center of the city, as you say, but we're surrounded by 2 sanctioned camps and several unsanctioned camps, which can be challenging from time to time from a fan perspective. So fans that park on our campus and customers and guests often feel very safe, but when they're coming from outside of our campus, that creates a challenge for us. And the Rose Quarter has had its busiest year ever, which is great for a bounce back of events and people obviously wanting to gather like we are here today, which is great. And we believe we're one of the largest gathering hubs of people in Oregon and the state. And so when you come to a Blazers game, or you come to a concert, or you come to the Phil Knight Invitational events that we have, you're getting people not just from Portland and the 25 miles around the city that are Blazers fans, but for bigger events, you're getting people from all over the state, and from events like the PK events and the 2030 Final Four that we're getting for women's, you're going to get people from everywhere. And we really want to make sure people have a great reflection, a great experience in our city when they come here into Portland, because that's incredibly important for all of us in this room.
And as you have talked to other people around the nation, and maybe I know you've had some feedback related to yes, we will, or no, we won't, related, or maybe the NBA or something like that. What's been some of the feedback that you've heard from others?
Yeah, absolutely. So we just, like I said, brought in 2030 Final Four. We'd love to be able to continue to have bigger events. We talk about NBA All-Star Game and getting our campus All-Star ready. And in order to do that, obviously we want to make sure the city's in the best possible position. So, we'll have folks from the NBA come out and obviously check things out. We're building great hotels. We're getting up to speed in all of those areas. But, when they're in and around the city and they don't see it sort of in the state that it could be for something like an All-Star Game, that's something that can create real challenges for us.
Yeah, for sure. And just between fan safety and livability and all the other things that go with that. So as we wrap here, Ed, you talked a lot about it earlier, but what would you like the audience to leave with as you think about your perspective on the things that are happening, and what are the ways that we can move the ball forward? I think we've spent a lot of time focused on the things that are wrong, but I think maybe we need to start to flip maybe we flip the dialogue a little bit here about the things that we're improving upon and where do we need to take it. And I'll kind of throw that out to each of you.
Well, I think things have opened up for a bit at the state level with funding more shelter beds, just not in Portland, but around the state. And that's really important, because if people can't find services in various parts of the state, they tend to go to places where they think they can. And it's really important that everybody do their share. Also, a lot more housing, affordable housing being built around the state. But I want this, I belong to this group called the Homeless Strategic Solutions Initiative. And we had commissioned Echo Northwest to do a report on LA. LA passed a big housing measure, a couple of them, and a few years ago. And instead of seeing a lot of progress on the streets, there's a lot of dissatisfaction, as you know, in LA for the lack of progress they see. So there's cautionary tale there. It was just a very short paper, but it's powerful in the sense that if we don't get ahead of the game on the inflow issues and just trying to remediate the inflow, we're going to be frustrated with what we see actually in our communities. Yeah. The second thing is we've got money coming in, as I said, on services for addictions and mental health, but we need to make sure we're doing right. So we need to get out we'll be producing another report that creates a framework for a systems approach for addictions treatment. But what I don't want people to think is that this problem is going to be, I don't think anybody thinks this anymore, that there's an easy answer to this. Mm-hmm. But let me say, in the wake of World War II, and I've studied housing going back long far, there were some 9 to 10 million service people coming out of the military. And during the Great Depression and much of that war, very little housing was being built. So they knew they had a hell of a housing shortage coming at them, and it was socially explosive. So the GI Bill, the FHA, all kinds of reforms to community banks, all kinds of things were created to facilitate funding, and it did leave people out. Redlining did occur for some low-income people, but particularly for African Americans. And that was the tragedy of that. But what it did do is produce millions and millions of units of housing. You know, the kind of will we have to have as communities and at the state and at the federal level to solve this problem is the same kind of will now, because this problem is so big. But we need to keep on doing what we can do here locally and encourage our Congress people, our governors, to move forward on a bigger agenda to get ahead of this problem. We can do it. We've shown in the past we can do it with a lot less resources.
Yeah. Chuck, in 30 seconds or less?
Yeah, I would say, you know, for me, there are some green shoots that are visible. I meet with all the new recruits that we hire on the day they get sworn in. And what I hear from them, the ones who are lifelong Portlanders and the ones that have come from other places, is they say, I want to see the city be really, really awesome again. And that's really special to me. I think that's really hopeful. I think a lot of people feel like, well, why would anyone want to be in law enforcement? Or why would anyone want to work in Portland right now? And there are a lot of people who do. We're going to hire another 13 people this week. That's going to push us over 800 for the first time in a long time. So that's a good milestone for us too. So I'm real hopeful.
Dewayne?
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo Ed's comments that we are making the best of the suboptimal solutions here with what the mayor's doing, but I'll applaud his efforts because it's having some impact around the Rose Quarter, which has been really good. And I invite this group to come to an event at the Rose Quarter down at the Moda Center and just check out kind of how the improvements have happened. It helps drive energy to the city. It helps bring engagement around, and you know, it helps make this a better place. So.
All right, excellent. Thank you. Topic of Portland. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Oh, this way.
I could see it.
All right, we threw a lot at you. It's been a busy morning. Lots of topics to discuss. But now we're going to head to lunch. And so enjoy lunch. We have, if you haven't seen it yet, if you go over to this side of the foyer over here, there's an area called the Go-Go Gallery. It's actually an art exhibit where you'll see some faces of the local business community, but also you get your picture taken with some of the things out there. There's a great place for selfies, things of that nature, so please enjoy that. The artist's name is Ellie Hygie, and thank you for sharing your art with us. So we are back here at 12:30 sharp. We're going to hear from a lot of elected officials in the last hour, and thank you for your time and attention this morning. See you in a little bit.
Please welcome to the stage Joth Rickey, President and CEO of Dutch Bros Coffee.